Tilea's Troubles, Part 90, an excerpt from Bonacorso Fidelibus's work, The Many Wars of the Early 25th Century. Autumn 2403. Despite the hopes raised by the crushing victories against the undead, achieved in the realm of Trantio, first at the necropolis valley of Naroa, and then further north in the Trantine hills, as well as the news of the ogre tyrant Razga departure through the mountainous pass of the Via Nano into the border princes, the whole peninsula of Tilea remained racked by war, or the imminent threat of war. Great armies were on the move, alliance forces combined and divided in response to this particular threat and that, and old enmities and hatreds continued, as ever, to interfere with the greater need. The army of the VMC had marched all the way from Alcente, upon the southernmost tip of the peninsula, to Pavona. Its general, Jan Valkenburg, was intending to join with Duke Alessio Falcone's mighty army to drive the vampires once and for all to their destruction, but had instead become distracted by the reports concerning the ruler of Pavona, Duke Guidobaldo Gondi. The Pavonan Duke had claimed in a public letter that a force of VMC soldiers, disguised as Lord Alessio's Portamaggiorans, had attacked the realm of Verezzo, killing the philosopher Lord Lucia Vescusi and plundering the region known as Spamanti. General Valkenburg, having himself interrogated a band of Verezan rogues fleeing the troubles in their realm, declared Duke Guidobaldo's words to be lies, and instead it was Duke Guidobaldo's own Pavonan soldiers who had performed the foul deed, spurred by a greed for plunder, now that their own realm was so weakened by the depredations of Boldagut's brute ogres, and hoping also to distract and damage all the realms around them, so that Pavona might not appear so weak in comparison. Many argued over the truth of the matter. Some said that the Pavonan Duke was guilty, and had made the false claim simply to hide the fact that he himself was responsible for the raid and murder, cleverly befuddling the picture, so that should it commonly be suspected that the Portamaggiorans were not to blame, he could respond with the second lie on top of the original deception. Others said that the VMC was actually responsible, being dishonourable plunderers by their very nature, and had used the lie as an excuse to go on from plundering Verezzo to taking more from Pavona also, all the while claiming to be entirely innocent, and so simply responding to Duke Guidobaldo's outrageous defamation, as well as seeking proof of his foul deed to restore their honourable reputation. Whatever the truth, the army of the VMC now drew close enough to lay siege to the ancient, mightily walled city of Pavona, wherein was garrisoned the last of the Pavonan armies. The young Lord Silvano, who had fought so bravely in the war against the vampires at Viadazza, Urbino, and Trantio, had only recently arrived home, given leave to depart from the Grand Alliance army after the victory in Naroa, where his men had not even needed to unsheathe their swords. Lord Silvano's father, Duke Guidobaldo, also returned, having travelled from Verezzo, where he had offered sanctuary to all the citizens, promising them homes, livelihoods, and protection in his own realm. Learning of the VMC's army's approach to his city, however, he could not tarry to escort those who accepted his offer, but raced ahead, arriving in the nick of time, only a matter of hours before the army of the VMC drew themselves up to within handgun shot of the city walls, in preparation to lay siege. He was greeted by his son, but any happiness either of them might have felt at being reunited was surely dwarfed by concerns regarding the forthcoming struggle. The VMC had marched north ostensibly to share the burden of the terrible war against the vampires and brutes, yet now they had instead embarked upon a war of honour against one of the oldest Tilean city-states. Despite the vampire Duchess Maria's complete destruction of the army of the Dedicati di Mora at Urbino, and the landing of an army of Sartosan pirates upon the coast at Lucini. It was muttered that their distraction proved their true nature as petty-minded merchants, more keen to profit from war than face the true threats facing Tilea. In the central parts of the peninsula, war had racked the realms as would a great wave, wrecking all in its path with its passage, both forth and back. The realm of Trantio, ravaged by the war of the princes, first wasted by the plundering progress of Boldagut's brutes, then polluted by the putrid army of the Church of Nagash, had now been captured by the Grand Alliance army commanded by Lord Alessio Falcone of Porto Maggiore. Having driven the undead force from the field of battle in the valley of Naroa, slaughtering many hundreds among the graveyards and tombs, then hacking down all the others they could find fleeing northwards, a large portion of Lord Alessio's great army had been forced to tarry some time, due to the need to cleanse the realm of corruption. Just as had happened twice at Viadazza, there were thousands of corpses to be destroyed, so that the evil that animated them might be prevented from doing so again. Great pits were dug for the burning of the corpses in the Necropolis Valley, as the land was reconsecrated, while every corner of every building in the city was scoured for the now dead undead. Bones, both bloody and dry, were piled upon carts, most taken away to the valley for burning, but some burned in lesser gardens of more within the city precincts. Here and there a severed limb still twitched, a lipless jaw snapped shut, while many a rotting hand would suddenly clutch, a sign that the evil curse pervading the city still lingered. Priests accompanied all the labourers and soldiers as they went about the horrible work, praying incessantly to ensure that the dead remained dead until they could be turned to ash. By Lord Alessio's reckoning, not all the undead at Naroa had been caught and killed, so he led the rest of the army, by far the biggest contingent, northwards, moving as rapidly as possible in the hope of catching what fraction of the enemy had escaped. By the time he reached the ruins of the walled town of Scorsio, however, he had come to accept he could not hope to catch the foe, for the enemy's legs were tireless. Furthermore, both Scorsio and Prato had been as badly tainted as the city of Trantio, and to leave them uncleansed would have been dangerously reckless. And so the great army's advance was temporarily prevented by the necessities arising from its already achieved successes and progresses. The last of the enemy, reduced to a mob of once dedicant zombies, who even in undeath remained frantic and strange in their motions, as well as a company of more ancient, osseous warriors, were commanded by one of the Duchess's favoured servants, her archpriest, Biagino. Once he served more, gifted by visions, and so driven by inspired purpose to be one of the leading agents in the raising of the gods' holy armies. But now, since his capture in battle, he had become a twisted mockery of his once living self. Running night and day without halt, taking the most barren and inaccessible route to make pursuit all the harder for any who attempted to do so, he led the last tiny remnant of his army back towards his beloved lady. Some powerful and wicked sense, a gift of his cursed affliction, directed him towards Urbino, where the Duchess Maria was. She had utterly overwhelmed the army of Morite dedicants who had marched to face her, killing them to a man. Their bodies lay thickly about the earthwork defences they had fashioned for their camp, along with the cooling corpses of the dishonoured Riemann Palazzo Guard, exiled from the city under Father Caradalio's command as a consequence of their inaction during the Disciplinati's seizure of Rimas. While a living commander would have been faced with the inconvenience of clouds of fat flies and the overpowering stench of 1,000 corpses requiring burial, she and her necromantic servant, Saphiro, saw only an opportunity to increase her army's fighting strength. For many hours, she and foul Saphiro conjured dark, magical energies to coalesce within and animate the corpses, so that one by one, the once holy army of the Disciplinati di Mo and the Riemann guardsmen struggled to their feet, then staggered, ungainly, away from the defences to muster themselves awkwardly outside, there to await the Duchess's further command. The unnatural strength and agility possessed by so many vampires allowed that which was once Maria to stroll easily, even regally, through the carnage of battle, to beckon up the dead with a calmly sinister gracefulness, so that the ultimate fate of blessed Father Caradalio's Disciplinati di Mo, in direct opposition to their most painfully earnest goal, was merely to swell the stinking ranks of the Duchess's Urbino army. Round and round the horror churned, so that now, yet again, another army would have to be found to face the foe in battle, once again attempting to kill that which was already dead. In Campagrotta there was a new ruler, or at least a ruler in waiting, serving an apprenticeship of sorts before obtaining full possession, for King Jaldiog of Caracborgo had gifted the entire realm, in a sorry state indeed after the harsh rule of the ogres, to the condottieri commander of the Compagnia del Sole, General Bruno Mazzolini. This was done, in part, as payment of debts, for the king had hired the company to assist in his war against Boldegut's lieutenants, but then won the war before the mercenaries arrived. But mostly it was done because it was the quickest and easiest way to promote the realm's return to health and security. There were contractual clauses to abide by, of course, such as the way of dwarves, and a good number of King Jaldiog's bearded servants yet remained in the city as friendly advisers. Within only weeks, life in the city was beginning to return to normality. Yet other hirelings, the Bretonian Brabazon, were heading north, with their fiery new commander, the Lady Perrette, as well as the still sickly Baron Garoy, and a strong contingent of Carrack Borgo dwarves, making their way to the realm of Ravola, there to drive out the last of Razga Boldegut's brute bullies, left behind when he embarked upon his bloody chevauchée into the heart of Tilea. In the city the Bretonians had so recently departed, the taverns were once again filled with men and dwarfs, clattering tankards and puffing upon pipes, as they forgot their troubles and discussed the opportunities ahead of them. Yet for many a week and more, it was only those who came from outside the city who could feel any sort of true contentment. Those who had been in the city during its occupation, much reduced in number, and all to a person grieving the loss of neighbours, friends, and family, wore haunted looks upon their faces, and struggled to find words for even the most mundane moments. Perhaps some part of them sensed that the apparent return of their old, familiar way of life was merely transitory, that the future held new horrors more than sufficient to rival those of the past, for unknown to almost everyone, sly and sinister agents already inhabited the shadows of the darkest hours, creeping surreptitiously through the streets, hither and thither, some to watch, others to whisper. The hour of their coming, for which they had long prepared, with complex machinations and conspiracies so deep as to be unfathomable, was at hand.